This is John Farrell with clothguru.com, and in this tutorial we're going to go over some of the interface basics in Marvelous Designer version 4. So let's jump over there. So when we open up Marvelous Designer, it looks like this. So the first thing that I want to look at is the avatar editor here. So the avatar editor is really only so useful. It really depends on how you're working. But what the avatar editor is it allows you to change the way the default avatar looks. So you can take the default avatar and you can make it look like an Asian woman or a man or even a child. There's a scary looking child in there. You can change the avatar's hair, you can change the shoes that the avatar is wearing, and depending on which one of these things you choose, it will change the options with the hair and the shoes. So the reason I say this is only so useful is generally I'm working on custom projects and I don't need to use the default avatar provided by Marvelous Designer. But if you're just beginning and you're trying to get your feet wet with Marvelous Designer, having the default avatar can really be useful. And it's useful also to prototype garments and try things out really quickly. So if I want to change something, I could just click on this avatar here, and it will go ahead and it will load the new avatar that I've just clicked. And now I have a guy who doesn't fit this dress. But you'll notice that the hairstyles changed as well as the shoe styles. So if I wanted to give him nice army boots, I can give him some boots there. Very attractive. So generally this is not really all that useful for custom work, but it can be useful, like I said, for quickly testing things out. So if you don't ever want to see this again, go ahead and just click this checkbox right here, and when you close it, it won't pop up when you launch Marvelous Designer in the future. I'm going to uncheck it because I don't know if I have to re-record this tutorial again. So let's say I accidentally clicked on this avatar and I want to get back to my regular avatar. Well, one of the lesser known features that was introduced in Marvelous Designer 4 is this library over here on the left, and we can expand that by just clicking on it. So this library gives me access to folders, and I can go ahead and I can add file paths in here, I can add projects and all sorts of different things, but I have these default folders added from the Marvelous Designer install directory. So if I click on the avatar section, you'll notice all my avatars are in here. And I can go ahead and I can click on the default woman avatar, and it will take a minute. Oh, double click, sorry. It'll take a minute and I will get my default avatar back that actually fits this dress. So we'll talk more about the usefulness of the library in a later tutorial. Right now let's look at each of the different windows. So first of all, you have your menus across the top of Marvelous Designer, and each of these is pretty deep. There's a lot that goes into these, but you can find almost all the commands that you execute in either the 2D or 3D window in the menus at the top. This over here shows you what version of the software you're using. This particular button will show you different notices from the Marvelous Designer forums. And so if you want to get quick access to what's going on there, you can click on that button. This will allow you to report a problem with Marvelous Designer 4, which is really useful actually if you want to quickly report a problem. This button right here links to your Marvelous Designer account page. So some users might have garments that they post to this page, they might have other things that they write on this page. I don't really use that, but if you want quick access to that page, you can get it here. This gives you quick access to the Marvelous Designer store, where you can buy Marvelous Designer garments that are already pre-made from the Marvelous Designer developers. And then we have two buttons over here, simulation and animation. So if I click on the animation button, you'll notice my UI changes. I get rid of the 2D window, and I have this dialog box that pops up and tells me that the sim quality has been changed to complete. So the reason it does this is because it wants, that's interesting, why does it say license problem? That looks like a bug, because I just bought a license. Anyway, it changes the quality to complete because when you're doing animation, generally you want the best sim settings. So that's why it changes the simulation property, and you'll notice this is where you can change that back if for some reason you want it to stay on normal, because it's loaded all the sim properties here in our property editor. You'll notice I also get a timeline here at the bottom, and some play buttons and some other various things that I might use in the animation session. So we'll look at the animation UI in a later tutorial. Let's go back to the sim settings. So over here on the left hand side I have my 3D avatar window. So a couple things about this 3D avatar window. We'll talk about these buttons and what they do, and these buttons and what they do in a separate tutorial. But note that I can pop this window out if for some reason I want to do that. So if you have two monitors, which I happen to have, when I clicked on that, it just popped that window right out to my other monitor. But if I want to dock it back in, I can go ahead and I can do that by pulling it over to one side of the UI. So you'll notice I can even do it on top or bottom if I'm able to. Oh, maybe this one doesn't dock to the top or bottom. Well, if I want to switch sides, I could do that by docking it on one side. Same thing goes for the 2D window. And I can resize these windows by dragging along this slider, which is really useful as well. So over here, this is obviously the 2D window, and over here you can make all of the changes to your pattern that you need to. The one thing I want to mention about these buttons along the top here is this button right here. So this button is the sync button, and what it does is it makes sure that any changes you make in the 2D pattern window are synced over to the 3D pattern window. You'll notice right now it's turned off. So if I go ahead and I delete this pattern piece, nothing happens. If I turn it on, you'll notice it disappears. If I keep this on and I begin to delete pieces, you'll notice immediately I see the change. So the sync button is an important button to know about, and the hotkey to turn this on and off is Control D. The last section of the UI that we're going to look at right here is the object browser and the property editor. So the object browser and the property editor are useful because they contain all the different attributes and things that you might want to change or look at in your scene. So the first tab over here in the object browser is the scene view, and you could relate this to something like an outliner in, say, Maya or another software package. Basically, it's showing you the scene graph in this outliner format. So if I go ahead and I collapse a couple of these things, it'll be a little easier to look at. So you'll notice I have a root, and then inside of that root, let's pull this little guy over, I have 2D sketch design, pattern design that contains all of my patterns and seams, and then I have some other 3D assets like the avatar, the camera. I have lights, sim properties, wind controllers, cloth controller in here as well. So this outliner is really only so useful in Marvelous Designer because you can't do things like, say, parent different assets. So I can't take this 2D pattern and parent it under something else. There's really no concept of parenting in this outliner. But what I can do, I can't even rename things in here. You notice if I double click, I can't rename these patterns. If I want to do that, I have to come down to the property editor and click right here and rename this pattern to something. So I just renamed it to pattern. Very descriptive. The other thing that this outliner allows you to do for seam line pairs is it allows you to show or hide them with these little buttons. But showing and hiding, you can do that here in the 2D window, so really this is only so useful. The only times that I ever really use this scene outliner are when I need to get to the avatar properties, and so I'll go and I'll click on the avatar here in the 3D window, and then it will select the piece of the avatar that I've selected, which is the body, and I'll go ahead and I'll select the root of the avatar, and that allows me to change the skin offset and some friction parameters that are really important. Other than that, the scene outliner isn't really all that useful. The next section is the fabrics. So fabrics in Marvelous Designer basically control the look of your cloth as well as the physical properties of the cloth. We'll talk more about how to use fabrics in a later tutorial, but you can add them or you can delete them if they're not assigned by clicking that trash can icon. Over here we look at the arrangement points UI, and we're going to talk about this in a later tutorial. And this next tab is bounding volumes. So the arrangement points we looked at briefly in my first video are these little points all over the avatar, and the bounding volumes are these, which are used to specify where the arrangement points should be on the avatar. And you can set up custom arrangement points and bounding volumes with these two tabs. But we'll look at that in a later tutorial. So that is a quick high-level overview of the basic UI elements in Marvelous Designer 4. In our next tutorial, we'll go through each of the windows and we'll actually look at what each of the buttons do. Thanks for watching. Bye.